Ladies and gentlemen, we have Alonzo Sterling.
I didn't know what to do, what to say. I just couldn't process it. I remember, what the doctor had told me. If something happens to me, that I wouldn't be able to make it to the hospital. For days, this was a couple of weeks. At that time, I was definitely living for tomorrow.
And do you think that's a positive or negative thing?
I think it's a negative thing.
Why?
Even in accepting that, it can be used as a motivation or encouragement to not just go on, but to be better. Not only is tomorrow isn't promised, you do things you don't love. However, you do them because of love, a stepping stone to greatness. All that you really have is right now.
What's going on, Meeting Gold listeners? It's Chris Battaglia, 416 Coffee, best coffee in the world. Use the coupon code Meeting Gold to get 10% off your first order at 416 Coffee. Enjoy the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Meeting Gold Show. I want to thank you for joining us today. I'm actually really excited for this episode. We have a fantastic gentleman, an old ball player in his college days.
Old ball player.
Old
I'm
ball
current
player.
ball player.
Current ball player. He'd still beat me in a one-on-one. He'd probably jump over me easily, no problem. But ladies and gentlemen, we have Alonzo, and how do I say your last name?
Sterling.
Sterling.
Yeah.
Alonzo, how you doing today, man?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Samuel, it's nice to sit down and talk to you again.
I appreciate that. We've talked a couple times off camera.
We have.
But finally, I've got you in the golden chair, your golden guest today. I've got a couple questions written down, but before we get into it, I want to ask you, talk to me about your college days just a little bit, and then what things people need to know about you just to understand you a little bit more.
My college days, I went away to college. First of all, I'm originally from the U.S. Okay, so I was born and raised there. That's where I went to school. And my college days were fun, exciting, and in some cases, it was lessons that I've learned that prepared me for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think a lot of people get that out of college or university, like lessons that they should take out of it?
I do think that. And I don't think it's always, though, from just the educational perspective, but the friendships, the camaraderie, the networking of people that you meet that, you're going to use and lay back and rely on for, probably the rest of your life. I do remember in high school, when I was going to college, in my senior year of high school, one of the recruiters that were recruiting individuals was saying that college is going to be the place where you meet your friends for life. And I thought when I heard that could not be true, because I had such good friends in high school, and we were so close, so tight, that I didn't think it could get any better than that.
Yeah.
But it did.
Really?
It did, yeah. The friends that I met in college are my friends for life. Some still from high school, obviously.
Of course, yeah,
but, my college friends were...
That's fascinating, because a lot of people, they meet their people in high school, and I'm not going to college, university, so I wouldn't know. But that's what I found interesting, was to think that you could build better relationships than high school and now in college. Maybe it's that level of maturity that you build in college, and it's a little bit more of the adult life rather than high school. Like those 4 years, you grow up together, right? Coming out of college, I know you're in the safety and security industry. Why did you decide to get into that? I
kind of actually fell into it.
The best things in life you stumble into.
I was, that wasn't my intentional goal, was to be in the security industry.
Right.
I actually wanted to be a pilot. You know, that was what I went to college for, was to be a pilot. It didn't work out for me. And, you know, I guess, you know, because of that, you start reevaluating things and, you know, start looking at myself and it's like, you know, I was a very aggressive person. And I'm thinking, how can I challenge that aggressiveness to a situation for me that can be profitable and yet positive?
Oh, interesting. Okay, so you were looking at it from a different perspective, like from a wider perspective.
Yeah.
Do you think you had that, you know, ability to look at things from a wider perspective for your whole life, or is that kind of something that was developed throughout, you know, your younger years?
I do think I had that ability for most of my years, and I would say that being around even the age of maybe 15 is kind of like when that happened. I transferred schools, excuse me, and the new school that I went to really just, I went away to boarding school.
Okay.
And it opened up my eyes to so many different possibilities, so many different avenues, ways of thinking, just living outside of my boundaries. And, you know, it just made me a little creative, but it just opened up my way of thinking about things.
So, Alonzo, can you tell me about the safety and security industry? What about protecting people? Was it innate in you from an early age, or was it something that you kind of developed throughout your childhood?
I would say it's a little bit of both. And I would say that because I am an older brother. And as an older brother, you always felt like you need to protect your younger siblings.
Right.
And so that was one aspect of it. And then the other aspect is I have older brothers. And my older brothers are tough, rugged guys.
Yeah, yeah.
And it just came into play. So I would say, to be honest with you, that all of us have that. Or in my family, all of us had that same type of tendency or feeling.
Was that like a parental thing? Because it all stems from somewhere, right? You probably got it from a lot of your older brothers. Well, where did your older brothers get it from, you know?
If I had to answer that, I'd say mom.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say my mother. You know, she was tough. She is tough. She's strong. Protector. She's all of that.
Yeah. So your relationship with your mother, was she encouraging you to pursue this, safety, security, bodyguard industry?
She was encouraging all of us to do what we wanted and be the best that we could be at it. And
which is so crucial as a mom.
Yeah.
Like I think kids need that, because if they don't have that, their surroundings, that nobody that young of an age is going to push somebody else to be better or chase their dreams, right? It just doesn't happen, right? So having a mother who just cares so deeply about you doing what you want to do and being successful at that, whether it be financially or just mentally, that's huge.
Yeah.
So what was something that you took out of the safety and security industry that you really learned for the rest of your life? Like one lesson that you learned from that. Was it a specific time or a story that happened where you learned something?
There was there were quite a few experiences, and I want to say that the industry or this position that I was in, gave me an opportunity to meet certain people that I never thought that I would meet, to travel to different places that I never thought that I would, ever go to. So, and in each of those situations, there are particular lessons that I've learned. And I can't just pull one out.
Yeah,
it was
it's hard to,
overwhelming experience. So I'm thankful for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is there any stories that you can give us on any specific things? I know we want to keep it really confidential and for the protection of your clients, but is there anything that you could maybe touch on?
In reference to?
Safety and security.
I'd rather not.
No worries.
I'm sorry.
No worries.
I'm sorry.
I want to talk about, I want to go back a little bit to your childhood. I want to ask you, what's something in your childhood, because we all have these things that not many people know about us in our childhood. Maybe it's an emotion that we experience so early on, and it could be a trauma that you live with. It's like almost like this PTSD. You fear this emotion. It could be, fear of making mistakes. If you were, I know some people, they were scolded by their parents so hard that they're afraid to make mistakes, and that subconsciously has been with them for the rest of their life. Not to get super deep, but what is something that not many people might know about you from your childhood age that maybe even your closest friends might not know?
I would like to think that I'm pretty transparent in reference to, my childhood and development, and my close friends have seen and in some cases gone with me through different experiences, as a child. But I will say the most impactful probably situation that I experienced as a child was losing my father. He passed away when I was a young age. I just turned 13 years old. And when he passed away, my older siblings had already left the house. So they had finished high school, went into the military or started working. And it left myself and my two younger brothers at home. So that was the most impactful. And I guess, then I was the oldest guy at home, when it happened.
Did you feel like you had to play tough guy?
Absolutely. I felt like I had to be older brother. I even tried to be father, and in some cases / husband, even, to my mom. And, you just do the best you can with it.
Yeah, yeah. To people who go through that at an early age, what do you think's the emotion that you need to deal with the most when losing a parent at such an early age? What do you think is like something across the board that kids, when they lose a parent at an early age, they all typically feel this specific emotion?
Say grief. And that can be broken down in so many different ways. In my situation, it was grief and it was anger.
Anger?
Yeah.
Why?
Because I wondered why God would take my father from me and leave us in that situation. Why would I be the oldest at home at 13 without a dad? Why? And I was angry about that.
Why do bad things happen to good people?
That's a question I don't know, and I can't answer. However, I have accepted that, though, that bad things do happen to good people, and even in accepting that, it can be used as a motivation or encouragement to not just go on, but to be better, you know, to be better. Maybe that comes with maturity too. I didn't know or realize that, you know, as a child or as a young teenager, I didn't know or realize that, but it has, but now I see it as a stepping stone to greatness.
I was going to say, because I see where you're going with that. You know, I'm not going to ask you, you know, was losing your father, you know, and how could that be a good thing? Because I never want to imagine that be a good thing. But what that allowed you to learn and how that allowed you to grow, it seems like it takes a pretty mature person to look at it that way. And to look at it as early as possible. At what age did you start to understand that? Because obviously at 13 you wouldn't.
No.
Nobody.
Honestly, it was in my mid-20s. It was my mid-20s.
That's still pretty early, though, I'll be honest.
Yeah, but I remember, you know, after that happened, well, I'll say this. When my dad passed away, I remember saying to myself, like, it hurt, okay? And I didn't always verbalize that or know how to discuss that. But I remember saying to myself, 10 years from now, I won't feel this way anymore. And I'll be glad when these next 10 years come so I can get over this feeling. And I also remember at 23 not being over the feeling and still dealing with it.
Yeah. I can't imagine what that'd be like, but we talked about grief, and that's not the only grief that you've had in your life. It seems like there's been a common theme, and it kind of makes me want to look at it from a wider perspective. Before I go more in depth with that question that I have, because I think that encompasses our whole idea of why I wanted to do the show interview with you, what happened in the last couple of years that really defined your life? You've told me this story, but I think it's important for people to know.
Okay. I had, going back to October 15, 2020, which is almost 2 years ago now, I had unexpected open heart surgery. And when I say unexpected, I mean unexpected. You know, I'm feeling fine. I am working. I'm playing sports. I'm feeling, you know, okay. You know, I do my yearly physical, stress test, and my doctors noticed a problem. And I went in for, long story short, I went in for a meeting with my doctor after all these tests were done. And I left work early to go to this appointment. And he told me in the appointment that there was a problem with my aorta and I needed emergency surgery. And they could book me for that the next day or so. And, you know, I'm sitting there like, what are you talking about?
Was it just pure disbelief?
I couldn't wrap my head around it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So it was disbelief. It was shock. I couldn't process it.
Can you also, real quick, can you tell the audience what was also happening while you were told that and why that assisted in so much disbelief?
At the same time, my younger brother was fighting for his life. He had cancer, which was also unexpected. But he had stage 4 cancer. And didn't know how long he had. So with myself, I'm going through this process with him, making his arrangements, final arrangements. And then I find out that, you know, I need to have this done right away.
Or else you'd be making yours.
Well, yeah. And as I guess, you know, the doctors told me, in my situation, he said, you know, in my conversation with him, I tell him, okay, give me some time to process this. And he's saying, you don't have time. You don't have time. If something happens to you and you're not in the hospital, you won't make it to the hospital because of the amount of time it would take just to get you to the hospital. If you're not in the hospital, you're done.
So what did they tell you when you needed open heart surgery and you accepted that? Well, let's go back. I remember you telling me what you actually ended up doing after he told you that. Didn't you go home?
I did. And he said, and you know, I guess when he told me that, here's the thing, I did go home, but the reason I left work early and that day, and I set the appointment for when it was because I had a basketball game that evening. So my plan was leave work early, go to the doctor, go to the gym, go to the game. And
like any other regular day?
Regular day.
So wait, sorry, because I want to keep going to the story, but one thing that I want you to quick touch on is, were you living in the present or were you living for tomorrow?
At that time, I was definitely living for tomorrow.
And do you think that's a positive or negative thing?
I think it's a negative thing.
Why?
Because tomorrow isn't promised. And not only is tomorrow isn't promised, I mean, you really have to break it down and think about moment by moment is not promised. All that you really have is right now, is this moment.
And you were thinking about your basketball game, which was hours.
Yeah, it was just
away.
2-3 hours away. And yeah, and I'm thinking about that and how we're going to do in the finals and then the playoffs. I'm thinking about that. So I just couldn't comprehend what he was telling me.
So when you you ended up going to the basketball game, right?
I didn't. I went home. But
oh, that's right.
I didn't know what to do, what to say. I just couldn't process it. I just went home and shut down, and trying to figure out what to do.
And so, did you go back to the hospital the next day?
No, I did not.
Take us through this story here.
No, I didn't. I tried to just understand what was happening, and I still couldn't believe how serious it was. And in doing that, I just kind of stayed off to myself, at least for the first couple of days. I didn't say anything to anybody about it. I didn't talk about it. I was just trying to accept it. But also during that process, I remember, what the doctor had told me, that if something happens to me, that I wouldn't be able to make it to the hospital. So I was afraid to go to sleep. Mm-hmm. I didn't know if I'd wake up.
So you probably didn't even sleep at all that night.
For days. This was a couple of weeks. I didn't.
Weeks.
Yeah.
I can't put myself in your shoes because it's so hard to imagine. Like, from the outside looking in, I'm like, man, just go to the hospital. But in your shoes, I'm thinking probably some subconscious feelings from losing my father at such an early age. And on top of that, now my brother going through such a hard time. And now you're telling me that I have to be worried about myself when I want to be worried about everybody else. What was that? Because you're in the safety and protection industry. Let's go back for a second. Your job is to care about others people's well-being, not your own, other people, right? You put your body in front of what's the bad things that are supposed to happen to somebody else, right? And you get paid to do that. But you have this innate feeling in you that you have to continue to do that. So you want to do that for your family.
Right.
Did you almost feel like it was selfish if you had gone to the hospital?
I didn't feel selfish, but that could have been a factor I just hadn't thought about. Again, I guess it was shock of the whole thing, and like you touched on too. How do I break this to my family at this time
when everything else is going on
and everybody knows what he's going through?
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that?
So after a couple weeks, like, tell us what happened with you. Like, did you ended up going to the hospital? Obviously, you ended up somehow getting your open heart surgery, whether it was at home or at the hospital. I don't know, because you're still here.
Thank God.
Thank God. You're right.
And I a couple weeks, I sat my family down and told them what I was going through, that I needed this, emergency surgery. And after telling them that and talking to them, I called the doctor, and we set a date, and I went in and had it done.
So having open heart surgery, what was the number one emotion or feeling that you had going into it? Were you just pure nervous? Like, were you afraid to die?
Unquestionably, my number one emotion was fear. It was complete fear.
What were the percentages of you actually living through that surgery?
I found out that the percentages were good, but it was the fear. The fear that I'm talking about, I guess one is the fear that I didn't want to go through it. So the fear of just having to go through it almost made me not go through it. I don't know if you've ever been afraid of something so much that, you just won't do it, even if it's good for you, even if it's the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. Fear, and in looking back, I think that is also why it was hard for me to even, make the decision or even just go get it done. I was afraid. And I was afraid to go through the process, and I was also afraid that if I go through the process and I make it on the other side, how would my life be? I didn't want to live a broken life. So, there are things that are important to me, sports being one, or hanging out, doing whatever, driving. And if I go through this and still not be whole, is it worth it?
Let me ask you this. Was is your life now better or worse than what it was before?
It's better.
Tell me why.
It is better for a couple different reasons. And I guess there's different things that falls under, these reasons. One is because during this process, God was with me. He has spoken to me. I've seen him move in these different experiences that I was going through. And that has empowered me. It has strengthened my faith. It's strengthened my trust. And even during my rehab periods, the things that I was able to do pretty quickly was just all signs that it was him.
What was the recovery process like?
My recovery process, it was, I'm not sure what the normal recovery process is, but I will tell you this. After I came out of surgery, I think it was actually my second day, and I was in the hospital, and I was in my hospital bed. I wanted to go to the bathroom, and I wanted to go on my own. And
why was it important for you to go on your own?
I wanted to see what I could do. I didn't want to be, I guess, quote unquote, taken care of, or, people around you and all this stuff. I wanted to see what I can do. I wanted to see what I can do. And I remember sitting on the, trying to get out of the bed. And I got to this side of the bed, and I put my feet on the floor.
How did that feel?
I started crying. It was so amazing to just feel the floor under my feet. I was overwhelmed with that feeling that this feels so good, just to feel the floor. Things that I have always done with no thought, second nature, didn't think about, and had no impact on me before. But just feeling the floor was tremendous.
I was going to say your level of gratification must have increased so much after you had the surgery. We were interviewing Dan Giancola, who had a stroke and a heart attack all within 2 years. And he had mentioned, it's interesting, he said the same thing as you. He said your level of gratification and your appreciation for the little things grows so much that it's almost, in some twisted way, something nobody else would understand, but one of the best things that could happen to you. Now, of course, I don't wish pain on you, of course, but to think that you had that feeling, I don't know how I could ever feel that level of gratification for being able to walk if I didn't know what it was like to walk with no legs.
Right.
Do you think that that's a negative to society and to human nature, that we can't learn to be thankful or appreciate the littlest things because we're so used to them?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, when you're talking about, the level of pain, and, you don't want to wish pain on anybody. I remember something that my older brother told me. And, I say it to myself all the time now, that pain is actually weakness leaving your body. And when I think about that, if the weakness is leaving my body, that makes me stronger.
It's a good way of thinking about it because it makes you feel stronger and more motivated in that moment.
Yeah.
And that's actually a backwards way of thinking about it, yet it's so... Yeah, I never heard somebody put it that way.
Yeah, he said pain is weakness leaving your body.
Yeah.
And if weakness is leaving my body, that leaves my body strong.
Right.
So that's the way I approached it.
So what's now in your life?
What's now in my life is a life of gratitude, a life of thankfulness, a life of appreciation.
What does that look like?
It looks like when I wake up, the first thing I do is thank God for waking up. But let me even back up a little bit. Even going to bed, I mean, and knowing again that tomorrow isn't promised, and literally believing that when you lay down and not knowing what's going to happen to you, is this my last breath? Is this my last breath? You're appreciative, and that appreciation is just overwhelming. It's overwhelming. The thankfulness is overwhelming.
I've had this thought in my head for so long, and I struggle to come up with an answer. I'm curious to hear, because I think you would have you have a more educated opinion, or a more educated answer just because of what you've gone through. But so when I work all day and then I go to bed, or I'm driving home before I go to bed, I'm driving home from the office at 11 o'clock, and I think to myself, if I didn't wake up tomorrow, what did I do? Everything I was doing this whole day was to build something for the near future. I don't want to say that you should live your life and just not work, but live your life and pursue passion. Do you think that can be found in work, and you should really only focus on chasing the things that you're actually passionate about? Or is it okay to do things that you maybe necessarily don't love, but then again, there isn't a promised tomorrow? Do you kind of get what I'm saying?
I do. And, to do things that you don't love, I think that is human nature. I think that is expected. I think it's normal. And I think that's a part of life. I think we all have to, at some point, do something that we don't love. If it's being stuck in traffic, if it's, going to the store at 2 o'clock in the morning to get something for the baby or whatever, you do things you don't love. However, you do them because of love, number one. And secondly, the just appreciation of being able to do it is underestimated. So you have to, sometimes do things you don't love, but that's all part of living in this life.
Absolutely. So what advice would you have to some people that, don't wake up every day with a smile on their face, or maybe not necessarily a smile, because I don't think you have to wake up every morning with a smile, but an appreciation for having breakfast. In North America, most people here are able to have breakfast in the morning. What would you say to somebody who maybe doesn't look at life with a positive perspective?
Why? Why don't you? And, also that not to get so caught up in so many small, insignificant things that really don't have a real impact on your life, and there's always someone in a worse situation than you.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it, I think.
And let me say this too, just to backtrack a little bit too. I remember the day that I had my surgery, my open heart surgery, the day that I had my surgery, there were 2 other people who had open heart surgeries that day in that hospital. Okay, so there were 3 of us in total. 1 died. 1 suffered a stroke. And me. And me. Just to backtrack a little bit, when I told you about how I put my feet on the floor that day on the side of my bed, after I put my feet down, I stood up. And that felt good. And I started walking to the bathroom. And I walked past the bathroom. I walked out of my room. And I started walking down the hall. And this nurse stopped me. Said, "What are you doing out of bed?" I said, "I felt like walking." She said, "You need to get back in bed." So she walks with me back to my bed, and she puts me in. My doctor comes in a little while later, and he says, I heard you went walking today. I said, I did. He said, do you think you can do it again? I said, I think I can. And I got up, and I started walking out of my room, down the hall. We got to the end of the hall. There's a staircase, like a fire exit, in between the floors. He said, do you think you can do any steps? And I said, I think I can. I said, it may take me a while, but I can do it. And I walked up, I think it was about 8 steps to a landing. And he said, okay. Then I walked back down. I walked back to my room. I got back in the bed. So when you talk about thankfulness and gratitude, I was overwhelmed with that.
Yeah. What are you looking forward to now most about your life going forward?
I like that question. My life going forward, what I look most forward to is just positivity in any and every situation, being positive, doing what's right, and explaining my thankfulness to God for what he has done for me. The experience that I went through was a very fearful experience for me. And throughout that experience, I got to know him in a way that I didn't think I needed to or that I could.
Yeah.
But my life is going to be a life of thankfulness.
You're also, as we come to a close, I want to make sure we touch on this. You're also pursuing this fantastic idea to help other people tell their stories.
Absolutely.
And create a channel around that.
That's right.
You want to talk about that a little bit? Yeah.
Sure. The channel has already been created by a gentleman that has come into my life and has been a great help to me.
Thank you.
The channel has been created. It's actually called Testify Testimonials. And that's Test to Fly Testimonials. It is an opportunity for people who want to express their thankfulness, inspirations by video or by written word. And we're going to post that. We're going to talk about it. And we're going to celebrate it. There are quite a few, I guess, different outlets, around, the country, around the world. And there's so much negative, depressing information, news, articles, whatever, out there. But this is a place where people can express how good it is to be alive right now, how they have went through different situations or circumstances and came out on the other side of those circumstances ready to soar or go even higher than what they previously were. Mm-hmm. One other thing I want to share with you. Sorry, I just want to go back.
For it. And
after my after I had my surgery, I went for a doctor's appointment, a couple months later.
Yep, like a checkup.
Yeah, and my doctor's telling me, he said, "You're coming along good. You're coming along good." He said, "Before you know it, you're going to be back to your old self." And I said to him, "I will never be my old self. My old self is not good enough anymore. My old self is the launching pad for where I need to be and where I need to go, where I am going. But the old me, it's not good enough. It's not good enough.
I love that. I love that. Where can people reach you if they want to ask any questions, if they want to reach out about Testify testimonials, hear more about your story? Hey, if they need some security.
If they do want to be involved in Testify testimonials, they can reach me at the email address, test2flytestimonials.
And that's the number 2.
That's the number 2, thank you. Test2flytestimonials@gmail.com. And we'll get back in touch with you. We'll, post your testimony, and let's do this thing together.
I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on today's show. I hope that you learned a thing or two about life. I love interviewing people just about their stories and the deeper meaning behind why we are the way we are, who we want to become, and what we should be factoring in when trying to live a positive and productive life. With that being said, I hope to see you in the next episode. Thank you, Alonzo, for joining us.
Thank you, Sam.
And we'll see you guys later. Bye.